Welcome to the American Dream Podcast Season 2, the show where I interview immigrants from all over the world to hear their perspectives of the American dream. I'm your host, Ekaterina. Привет. I'm in a studio with John Tsahiridis. Yasu.
Yasu.
You are actually born here in the States, but moved to Greece when you were just a baby. You have lived there for a very long time, and it has become your other home country. However, later in life, you came back here to States. So how did all of that happen, and why?
Mostly, there's a lot of different reasons, really, because my parents moved around a lot for various reasons, nostalgia, money, basically, and just different circumstances, different things that happened throughout life, basically.
Okay.
But as I grew up there as a kid, and there was times, after almost as a kid, it seemed like we moved almost every few years. Mm-hmm. When I was younger, though, it was mostly in Greece. But when I'd come back, for just small stints for second grade or kindergarten or whatever it was. But I lived in Branson and in Springfield and St. Louis.
Interesting.
And that kept on happening, back and forth for a while. Again, different things in life happened until basically my last year in high school. And that's when I decided, I went to college and I decided I was going to stay and, finished my degree and tried to finish my degree. And just basically, I enjoyed, working and living in the U.S.
Okay.
But at that time, my parents actually decided to go back to Greece permanently at that time. So I've been here for more of a resident here now for the last 20 plus years, probably close to, a little bit over 20 years.
And how long you lived in Greece?
Cumulatively, probably about 15 years.
15 years. Okay. So what was it like, I guess, growing up there and living there?
As a kid, of course, it was always exciting because I had a lot of friends there. But the thing was, going back and forth from Greece and the U.S., it almost seemed like you were going through a time machine. Because, especially around that time in Greece, they were behind in technology and just quality of life. And so every time I was excited to go back to Greece to see my friends and just, and being in Greece in general. But every time I went back to the U.S., I was excited, okay, different quality of life, different things to expect, So it just seemed like, I was going through a time machine almost.
Yeah. It sounds like you lived there long enough to get to know the mentality and the culture of that country. Oh, yeah. So when you came back to the States, or I guess when you were traveling back and forth, what was something very different that you've noticed right away after living in both countries? Well,
in Greece, the biggest thing was just how more accepting, how more welcoming they are. I guess in Europe in general, but especially in Greece, it was more, it's almost like more family, direct family, even with strangers. It's like you had a connection, because especially how you lived and things, you have a more closeness to that. In the U.S., it's like, not that there weren't not welcoming people, but, it's a lot more, you see more of a foreigner, In Greece, of course, they tease me more as a foreigner because, I lived in the U.S.
Right.
Because I'd come back and I have more of an accent and vice versa. When
you were leaving Greece for the last time, did you plan to stay here for the rest of your life? What was the hardest part about leaving?
Again, friends and family and things like that. But one thing I learned, especially in junior high and high school, it was a lot easier for me to go to school here than it was in Greece. I was doing great here. I was like acing everything. I was like a honor student. In Greece, because of the way they don't have as much, of course, money and everything like that, how they teach things. It was a lot more older school where you had to memorize everything. I wasn't very accepting of that, especially at a younger age. And I actually struggled in Greece in school. But here it was like I barely studied and I was just acing everything. And I was just absorbing everything, the teachers, just having the environment, of more money, basically, of more economics, it made a huge difference. Once I started realizing that, even though I have a lot of friends and family there, I could have got a job there, things like that. But the thing is, for me, it was like, I knew I wanted to be my own man. I didn't want to be, something given to me. So I was like, I was going to push myself to do everything and go to school here and, and just build a business eventually and do it on my own without the help of somebody else.
Okay. So how old were you when you moved to Greece?
I was like a baby. I was a month old.
Yeah. And then you came back when you were?
Basically 3 years old, I think. So it was like, again, it was like some of that stuff is like, I don't have all the details, but it was almost every 3 years.
Okay. Almost every 3 years.
And there were some times where, we went for a little bit and then came right back. So it's like there was a lot of back and forth.
I guess I should have asked you that in the very beginning, but why did you move there in the first place? Did you have family there?
Yeah.
in
Both
Greece?
my parents are Greek.
Okay.
And they're both full Greek.
Okay, so top 4 challenges every immigrant faces in the U.S. are language barriers, employment, housing, and access to services. But is it the same way in Greece?
It is because, as I said, the language barrier, the part of the language barrier was that because I didn't stay the whole time, as you're growing up and you're going to school for a grammar and everything, there was gaps. Mm-hmm. So things I was missing, and so it made it harder and harder, as I was growing older to keep up, especially with English. And I tried my best, of course, as much, there was always, tutors and everything like that, but when you're taking big gaps of a year, 2 years, or sometimes 3 years, you're missing a lot of things to keep on able to keep it going forward. Mm-hmm. So I was never good in English. My grades and stuff were never good in English, but everything else I was really good at. So that was the biggest part of the language barrier, especially that your accent is very adamant. You don't even realize how adamant it is when you go from one place to the other. Mm-hmm. One place, as a kid, especially, they're teasing you, and you're in Greece with an American accent, or if you're in America, they're teasing you because you're a Greek accent.
Yes. So besides the language barrier, did you ever had any other problems moving to Greece, or?
I don't know. I always enjoyed that. For me, as a kid, as I was younger, and as I grew up, I always looked at. I liked the challenge. I liked the change. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing is just leaving friends behind. That was the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. And you try to keep up, with connections and stuff like that, but it's still pretty hard. We always, we had a lot of family here, and we still do. So it wasn't as hard, for housing and things like that, because we always had family. They always, give us heads up on where to go and things like that. So it wasn't as difficult, but it was. I mean, as a kid, I could tell it was pretty difficult still for my parents because they knew the language, but not that well. But they were able to get by. Mm-hmm. They found ways, basically. It just depends how stubborn you are.
Right. Do you miss Greece?
Oh, yeah. This is the longest I've ever not been to Greece, and it's like I opened my restaurant, thinking, considering everything I wanted to be authentic as possible to Greece. It's all from memory and all from from my common sense and all that kind of stuff and research. I put in my business plan that I'm going to be taking multiple trips to Greece, for business purposes, but it's mostly reconnecting with Greece. Mm-hmm.
You own a restaurant here in Springfield. Yes. It's called Greek Belly.
Greek Belly, yes.
And I actually been there, and you guys have Russian mayo there.
Yes, we do. We do.
And I tried it, and I don't know the difference. What's the difference, I guess, just on a side note?
The recipe I got that I learned, it was from the northern part of Greece, and the story of why they have it in Greece and why it's become popular is, especially in the northern Greece, apparently there was a Russian chef that went to and was working in the Thessaloniki, the second biggest city in Greece up in the north. Uh-huh. And he worked in this famous restaurant, and he, it was some kind of table that was asking for something different. A lot of these, the European countries, a lot of these dips are considered salad. And so he created that, and then apparently it became very popular. Mm-hmm. And it spread out through at least all of northern Greece. So a lot of the Euro shops and other restaurants will have these dips, like tzatziki and a bunch of other things, and that one of them is roshiki. Mm-hmm. And so it's like over the years, I had friends, from in the Balkans areas, and oh yeah, that's something that we have that's very similar, either exactly the same or it's variations of it. Might even have meat in it, things like that, or deli meat.
So why did you decide it on a restaurant?
So one of my first jobs, actually it was my second job as a kid. I was 15 years old or so. Was my dad was worked in the restaurant business as a main job or a side job, because he worked many jobs as a kid when I was a kid, and he wanted me to start working, and I wanted to start working too, and so he got me to work. He was working as a server at a fine dining restaurant, and I got hired and trained to work as a busser. Mm-hmm. And since then, I just clicked so much in doing that, and I just kept on going. And I always worked in the restaurant business my whole life, and it was I felt like second nature. And I see all the other people struggling with it. Like for me, it was like I enjoy doing it. It's like part of my culture and nature of hospitality. Even though I was going to school for other things like architecture and things like that, I thought about the restaurant business. Even though I knew I could do it in college, I decided, okay, I want to be my own man, and I'll have my own business. And it just clicked, that I was really good at this. And I was like, I should go down this path.
If someone you knew from Greece were planning to come to this country and this community, what would you tell them to expect?
That's an interesting question because in Greece, compared to a lot of other, it's probably similar to a lot of other European countries. It's hard for a lot of those guys to leave the country, because you have a certain quality of life, a certain way of life of going out every night or another night, with things like that. Here in the U.S., it's all business. It seems like, even at a younger age, you're focused on working, 40-hour work weeks and all that stuff. In Greece, for the longest time, it wasn't like that. You have all these like siestas, almost like, how they do in Spain and things like that, where in the middle of the day, things stop for 2-3 hours. It wasn't always that focused of work. It's probably gotten a lot different now over the years, especially because of the economy and stuff. But that was one huge difference where I've seen some other Greeks try to come and work here and like, oh, guess what? Nostalgia and the way of life, they had to go back. They couldn't handle it. It was way too much. You're like, oh, the only thing you do is work here.
Right.
And so the biggest thing I'm going to tell them is like, it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And
so
be ready for it.
Don't, a lot.
Yes. And don't expect to be going out, as much
when
as
you come to America. Would you advise them whether or not they should come in general?
Yes. I mean, it depends on the person's drive and what their goals are, how serious they are. Things are connected more than they were in the past because of the internet and things like that, to be able to keep, your connections with your family and friends. But you have to be very patient. You have to be a hard worker. You have to be very organized. Prefer to be a lot more organized than you are in general. I feel like how way of life, general life in Greece is.
So if they decide to come, what advice would you give them on how to make the best out of their experience?
Do lots of research of the area you're going to, because Greeks have all these, imagination about how things are from the movies and TV shows.
Just like every other immigrant.
Yes. But the thing is, different parts of the U.S. are totally different compared to other parts. So it's like, not every place is going to be like L.A. or New York. We're in Missouri. It's a whole lot more different than that is. So do that research to find out the way of life, the place you're going to go to is. And then, of course, if you have friends and family, that's the plus to help. And ask questions, a lot of questions.
Thank you so much, John, for sharing your story with us. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. You're listening to the American Dream Podcast. I'm your host, Ekaterina, in a studio with John Tsahiridis. Greece is one of the oldest countries in the world, with a history going back to the year 776 before the Common, first ever Olympic Games, and famous Greek myths and gods. The Greek nation seems to be very proud and patriotic of their heritage and has lots of love for their country. However, the United States has the largest ethnically Greek population outside of Greece. According to U.S. Department of State, the Greek American community numbers about 3 million Greek immigrants. And after doing a full-on research about living in Greece and why people leave that country, I could not find a single bad thing about it. The worst disadvantage that Google showed me was bad weather. Sometimes tourist areas are expensive and bad traffic. So what is the reason why people immigrate from Greece?
It's money, basically, and it's work, because especially Greece had some bad times in 2008 with the economy going down and things like that. Basically the country going bankrupt. It's funny that I was almost like, in a way, I was like foresaw that in a way, because when I was even younger, it just didn't click to me how things are. Because as I said earlier, like that, I don't like it where everything is about having clicks. Basically, like, okay, somebody, they're gonna do you a favor and get you a job or things like that. I didn't, that's how things have been for a long time. And I never liked that aspect. And I want to be able to, work hard and earn my position, basically. Even with schooling, it didn't seem like that was going to happen in Greece. A lot, there's some brilliant people in Greece I've seen so good at school, after they finished school, they couldn't get jobs. You couldn't get a job to make good money. They would barely make any good jobs. And you see all these other people that, with their connections, they were making a crap load more money. I never liked that. And even though I had family here when I came here as a kid, and I didn't want to work for my family. I didn't want to, I didn't like that notion that somebody's going to say, oh, he got that job because of his family or something like that. So I purposely always I would find a different way. In Greece, people leaving there, they want to earn more money, have a better quality of life, even though economically a better quality of life. That's the difference, because there's good quality of life in Greece. There's all the places you can go out. Despite the bad traffic and everything, everybody drives like crazy in Europe. But that's the biggest thing, you know.
So money is the Greek American dream.
Money and ambition.
Money and ambition. So what is the American dream for you? And is it different from the Greek American dream?
I'd say it's the same. Having the opportunity to do what you want to do and have a goal and have the tools and being able to have the chance to do it. And I feel like in Greece, you don't have the chances of you don't have the same chances of doing that stuff. You don't have the same type of help. You don't have the same kind of government. All that kind of stuff, you know, as much as nobody likes the government they live in, you know, US or Greece, whatever, guess what? It's a whole lot better here than you would think it is. There's a lot more opportunities. If you put your mind to it, you can do it. I was always nervous about opening my own business, but I was very confident because I knew every aspect of it. Even though I didn't go to school for business, I was able to have enough common sense to learn everything. I researched everything myself. That's one thing I did learn from school is be able to how to research, and I became a full expert on it. And that's what helped me the most. Besides, you know, being able to understand, you know, the foods and what was it about Greece that, you know, what was about this food or the whole atmosphere. Being able to reimagine things and make it to where it needs to be.
So you believe in American dream. Do you have an American dream?
For me, what the American dream is being able to have a dream, to have the opportunity to have that dream and do everything you can to have the potential, you know, say, okay, you can say, oh, you have all the potential in the world to do it, but can you do it? And executing it is the American dream for me.
So you haven't reached it?
I have. I feel like I have now because I feel like I'm ahead of the plan of what I wanted to. But the thing is now I'm starting to see I have even more opportunities to do more things that I want to do. You know, before some of these things, I felt like, okay, I'm not sure if I can be able to do this. But now that it seems like my mind has opened up even more now. Like I can see now that there's opportunities to do things even more. So it's like, for me, is to reach that American dream is to be able to say, okay, I did everything I think I want, you know, I want to be able to do, have the potential of doing.
Is there a limit in general when it comes to that?
The limit is, I always joke about this. It just depends how lazy you are.
What about you?
I always joke about how lazy I am. Like, I keep saying to friends and family, like, we'll see how lazy I am if I'm going to keep on going. But yeah, I can see if I want to focus even more and more, I can, there's more things I could do.
So do you think you reached the Greek American dream?
I would say compared to the old ways of, you know, the old things, how the things were thought of, I'd say I have. Because, you know, I opened the restaurant, I have my own business, and, you know, and it's going good.
So if you were to come back in Greece, people would think you're living their American dream.
I would think so, yes.
So finally, if someone you knew from Greece were planning on coming to this country to fight for their American dream, what would you tell them to expect? And what advice would you give them?
Start backwards. I would say the first thing is be very patient. It takes a lot of patience. I mean, yes, there's some people that can just go, you know, full on everything. But the biggest thing is have patience and, you know, do research and learn as much as you can. Don't, you know, as we said before, it was like, no, it's not about having the party life and things like that. That can come, but you have to limit yourself on that kind of stuff if you want to succeed, because not everybody can just party and work constantly, you know, and not get burnt out.
Thank you for visiting me today, John. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram at podcasttad.